All right, guys, let's talk about steady state. Now, steady state is going to refer to any consistent and sustainable effort that you can produce in your training. Now, while it can be applied to some anaerobic intervals, particularly longer ones of 20 minutes or more, it's nearly ubiquitous in its use when referring to aerobic training. And so you're also going to hear terms like UT1, UT2. I'll talk a little bit about UT3. Some countries will use a category system, and they'll call UT1 Category 5 and UT2 Category 6 training. Now, UT stands for oxygen utilization, and your oxygen utilization training is designed to increase your body's ability to deliver oxygen to your muscles. And so on a physiological standpoint, you are essentially keeping pressure on your circulatory system, and that is stimulating the body to adapt by laying additional capillary beds at the side of your muscles where the blood is getting delivered. And the more time that you spend doing that, the more adaptation you're going to create. And because it is creating adaptation at the side of the muscle, sport-specific aerobic training is going to have a greater training effect. But that being said, I do not want to discourage you guys from doing cross-training, because cross-training can be immensely helpful in its ability to add psychological variety and to just kind of help keep the muscles balanced and avoid overuse. But back to what that UT1, UT3, and UT2 are. So UT2 is going to make up the bulk of your training as an endurance athlete. Now, UT2 is executed in rowing at stroke rates in the higher teens. So we're looking at 14 to 20 stroke rate with a focus more in that 17 to 19 range. Now, the volume that we're going to be putting in ideally is going to be in the 60 to 120 minute range. Now, if you're like me and you're not training 60 to 120 minutes on a regular basis, then your UT2 volume can really be referred to whatever your median or average aerobic sessions are going to be. And so right now I'm at 40 minutes, and I'm going to be doing 40 minutes of steady state today. Last week, 30 minutes was my normal volume, and before that, when I wasn't focusing on my rowing training, anytime I'd hop on for 10, 15, 20 minutes, I would consider that my UT2 session, and you can consider it your UT2 as well. Now, as you're building into your aerobic fitness, you're going to want to increase that volume over time. I consider 60 minutes as a good minimum for athletes that wish to compete in the sport or just want to develop their fitness at a higher level. And you want to take your time getting up to that 60 minutes if you're not used to it. And the best way to do that is just to alternate longer days and shorter days, with the shorter days generally being somewhere around a half or a third of what the volume of your longer days are. You can start at 15 minutes. If you're just doing 10 or 15 minutes, you can do 10 or 15 minutes every day, and then just starting adding minutes on your alternating days until you start to get to 20, 30, 40, and up to 60 minutes, with 15 minutes being your lighter days there. And then once you get to 16 minutes, you can start bumping up those shorter days to 30 minutes and do that gradually. And then once you're at 30 minutes for your shorter days, you can kind of start gradually increasing your volume on both your longer and shorter days. And you're also probably at a point where things are going to get a little bit more complicated than just doing long, short, long, short, long, short. You're going to start to add different training categories in there. But for the volume, ideally 60 to 120 minutes at a time for your UT2 training, stroke rates in the high teens, 14 at a low, 20, 21 at a high, with a median right in that 17 to 19 range. Now, your effort is going to be the next critical factor of your UT2 training. UT2 training is done at a firm aerobic effort. Now, it's going to be an effort that is sustainable for whatever the duration that you're doing is, and it's an effort that you will find at the end should leave you in a pleasant state of fatigue, and while you're doing it should be at a point where you can speak, but it would take effort and it would disrupt your rhythm to string together sentences, or certainly to have a conversation. UT2 training is not conversational pace. It is not long, slow distance. I would reserve those descriptors for a UT3 pace, or more of a recovery pace for myself as a rower, or what a longer endurance athlete like a cyclist would use for the bulk of their training. But in rowing, if you're using long, slow distance, then you're going to develop your aerobic system, but you're not going to develop the strength needed in the sport, because rowing is a power endurance sport, not a muscular endurance sport like a sport like cycling. So you need to be at a pace that is hard work at the stroke rates that you're using, but it is also sustainable. All right, so you can say a couple words, maybe you can do a sentence, but if you kept doing that, you would lose your breath, and then you would have to kind of recover your power in your stroke. So that being said, let's move on to UT1. And I'm not going to talk too much about UT1 here because it's not the focus of today's training session, but UT1 is still an aerobic session, and UT1 is really going to be characterized by a shift in your stroke rate and a little bit of shift in your rhythm and how you're applying power. And so rowing at a UT2 is going to be a good amount of power per stroke. When you get up to UT1, where you're going to be using stroke rates in the 22 to 24 range, and your split is generally going to be maybe 4 to 6 seconds faster than what it was on your UT2. Your volume for that is generally going to be half to maybe 3/4 of what your median UT2 session is going to be. And so if you're normally getting in 60 minutes of UT2 training, then your UT1 training should probably fall in the 30-minute range, and at a most be in a 45-minute range. I would usually say 45 minutes for aerobic training when your volumes at UT2 are bouncing up into the 90 and 120-minute range at least once a week, and 60 minutes for your other days. So that is UT1. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a different video when I'm actually doing a UT1 workout, but today we're going to be doing that UT2. So I wanted to talk about that and make sure you guys knew. Now, as far as how much do you need to be doing this, UT2, while you're building fitness, should make up about 83% of the minutes that you're putting in during your general fitness building phase. Now, this is 83% of the minutes that you're accumulating at a UT2 pace and faster. So I would not use UT3 and slower work, or any of your strength work, or any of your active recovery work as minutes in that calculation. Now, in that general phase, you should be using about 8% of your minutes to train the UT1 energy zone. So that is a large majority of your training volume at UT2, and a relatively small amount at UT1 when you're just building your base fitness and you're not focused on actively competing. Now, as you get closer to your competition phase, I would say about 2 months out from your first competition, it's going to be start to shift that percentage to focus a little bit more on UT1 and a little bit less on UT2. And so those percentages would drip down to about 53% for your UT2 minutes and about 30 to 31% for your UT1 minutes. Now, you'll notice that you're still training the bulk, certainly of your aerobic, at a UT2, and even the bulk at 53% of your total training minutes in general, even when you're shifting into a competitive focus for your training. That is because as a rower, you are an endurance athlete. There are simply not any sprint, purely anaerobic race opportunities for the sport of rowing. So with that being said, hopefully you guys understand a little bit more what UT2 is and why you should be doing it and how it helps you as an athlete. I'm going to set up here and dive into the session. I've got 40 minutes on today, and yeah, I'll let you guys kind of watch along, fast forward through if you want, and I'm sure I'll have some thoughts at the end. And yeah, thanks for listening, and hopefully this helped give you guys a little bit of perspective into this kind of key component of your training as an endurance athlete.
All right, so done. That was a good one. Last 10 minutes, a little challenging. Definitely think for all that talk about U2, drifted a little bit into U1 for the last like 10 minutes or so, but no biggie. Not the end of the world. Once I get a monitor to replace my broken one, it should be a little bit easier to keep myself where I'm supposed to be. I was actually feeling really good in that first 20 minutes, so that's probably what kind of set me up to go a little faster than I should have early on, but live and learn. Getting a little bit of blisters kind of with the feet there. Got to figure out what to do about that. I was actually the bad thing about rolling barefoot is you get blisters in different places, but yeah, it also it'll force me to kind of keep my foot in, don't let my feet kind of bow out like this when I'm rowing, so what they're rubbing, so that toe is rubbing against the plastic. If I can focus on keeping my foot vertical like it should be, then I won't be dealing with those blisters. So problem solved. Nothing like a little bit of pain to dissuade you from bad habits, but yeah, so that was the UT2. Guessing my stroke rate is probably about 19-20. I'll have to check the video on my stroke watch to kind of confirm that, but I usually like to kind of hit around that 19-20 range for most of my U2, unless I'm specifically trying to kind of go a little bit easier. But yeah, heart rate was kind of bouncing into that U1 for me by the end. Generally I consider U2 anything under 168 for myself and averaging around 150 for the workout. UT1 generally kind of peaks out around 174 to 176 for me when I'm in shape, but when you're out of shape, you're gonna push through those typical zones anyway. And you know, if those numbers seem high compared to what you read, that's because what you read is mainly bullshit. It's like Cosmo ab workout level stuff. Everybody has a different heart rate profile, and no, you can't calculate it with a little formula. The only way you can figure it out is by putting in a lot of volume and recording it, and then just kind of extrapolating the data from the actual output of your heart. But you know, I've had teammates that have done steady state in the 110s, 120s, and race in the 150s. I generally do my steady state somewhere between 150, 168, maybe 140s for the early stages. And I have known and I coach athletes all the time. I see this a lot in youth athletes, where steady state will be up in the 180s regularly and kind of tip out into the 190s for those longer sessions. So heart rate, that is a completely different, very long video. I'm not going to dive in, but I will say most of the info out there is BS. Don't let your heart rate dictate your aerobic training. You should really go based on feel, like we talked at the beginning. Firm but sustainable. You should be able to talk, but just a little bit, a couple words, maybe a sentence or two before it disrupts your breathing pattern. And you should finish kind of in a pleasant state of fatigue. You know, you're breathing hard, but you know, your breath has a rhythm. If you start to lose a rhythm in your breath, you know you've got an anaerobic, which hopefully is an issue if you're UT2, because you got a whole other energy zone between UT2 and anaerobic work. But a lot of good info today. I really hope it helped. Please throw comments below. If you have questions, I'll answer them as best I can. Again, benefit of catching the channel early is there's not a lot of people watching or commenting, so chances are I'll see what you put down there, and I'll help out as I can. So thanks for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, help the channel grow. Hit that bell notification if you want to get an email, or I think it's email, whenever I get a new video out. And more important than that, spread the word. Get the word out there, guys. If this helped you, then it can help other people. And I am doing this to help you guys as much as for myself, to keep me accountable in my own training. But thank you for that, and we'll catch you for tomorrow's workout.